Hello and good day to everyone. My name is Tricia Wind. I'm the program leader for the Global Partnership for Education's Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, or KIX for short. You are most welcome today for this webinar that we are hosting about a call for proposals that dropped on May the 4th. The call invites proposals for applied research that address key challenges in education data systems and data use across a set of countries in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. Next slide, please. The agenda for today's webinar is going to have a number of parts. I'll introduce IDRC and GPE KIX. My colleague Hamidou will introduce the theme of the call on data systems and data use, and he'll present the research questions and overall objectives that we aim to achieve through this call for proposals. Then my colleague Sanjay and I will review the types of grants that we will be offering and who can apply. We'll review what we're looking for in the proposals that we're receiving, and we will be responding to the questions that we have received already by email ahead of this webinar. And then there will be time for us to answer your questions live during this webinar, and you will have a chance to type in your questions so that we can reply as we go. We will have an hour and we will address as many questions as we can. Just to say that there is a document in which we're compiling the questions that we've received, an FAQ document that's available on the call landing page on the IDRC website. So you can look at that FAQ document to get more details. We will update it following this webinar to answer some of the questions that have come in, and we may update it again once or twice before the call closes. Before we begin, let me just mention a couple of housekeeping issues. One is that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted online on the call website in French and in English. But note please that only the presenters will be visible and named in the recording, so you will not be named and you will not be visible. At the top of the webcast player on your screen, you'll see a number of navigation buttons. If you lose connectivity during today's live broadcast, just click on the refresh icon. That is the one with the two arrows that are going in a circle. If you want to follow along with closed captioning, please click on that captions button, which is like a dialogue bubble with a pencil in it. When it's time for the live Q&A, if you want to submit a question, then you click on the chat bubble and you enter your name and you can type in your question. If you have technical difficulties with the audio or the visual, click on the question mark icon where you can enter your email and a summary of your issue, and then our provider's help desk staff will do their best to resolve your issue. And if you want to change languages or the video quality or some other preference, you can click the settings button, which looks like a gear icon. So with that, I hope that we're all set, sitting comfortably and ready to begin. Next slide. So just a word about IDRC and about the program that is offering this call for proposals. IDRC, or the International Development Research Centre, is an agency of the Canadian government. It funds applied research across Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and the Caribbean on a whole range of topics, for instance, agriculture, climate change, social and economic policy, governance, and also education, which is the program that we're talking to you from, the Knowledge and Innovation Exchange of the Global Partnership for Education. So KIX is a joint endeavor between IDRC and GPE. It's the knowledge and innovation exchange of and for the over 80 countries that are partners of the Global Partnership for Education. KIX goal is the one on screen, and it's tied to GPE's overall goal. So the goal of KIX is that GPE partner countries have and use the evidence and innovation they need to accelerate access, learning outcomes, and gender equality through equitable, inclusive, and resilient education systems. And the way KIX works is summarized in the triangle on this screen. It has three interconnected parts. At the top is the learning exchange. Through 4 regional hubs, people who are working in today's education systems, both in the Ministry of Education and civil society or development partners, come together for peer learning and exchange on an ongoing basis. They consider existing evidence and innovation. They share innovation and best practice that's coming in from their own contexts or from outside. They mobilize existing toolkits and resources that are useful in education systems. Their top priorities are the topics on which then IDRC funds applied research in those same countries. So the topics that we put out in calls for proposals are ones that surface through the regional hubs. We currently fund a suite of 40 applied research projects, and through this call, we will be adding to that. The findings of the applied research project and the expertise of the organizations involved often feed back into the regional hubs. Finally, there's a new mechanism that we are starting, the third part of the triangle, which is providing more tailored evidence support for particular policy processes in individual countries. So we're calling that country support. Again, the priorities for country support surface through the hubs. The findings can inform and be used of the applied research, and what we're learning through the country support then can also go back into the hubs. So that's how KIX works. On the next slide, you will see the countries that are the focus of this call for proposals. These are GPE partner countries across Africa, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific. You'll see a full list of countries in Annex A in the detailed call document. So with that, I'm going to turn over to my colleague Hamidou to explain the theme, the questions, and the objectives of the call.
Merci beaucoup, Tricia, et bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Thank you, Tricia, and hello, everyone. My name is Hamidou Boukari, and I'm a specialist, main specialist program at the IDRC, in charge of KIX. I'm based in Dakar, Senegal, in the IDRC office for Western Africa. As Tricia was saying, my role today is first to give you the background against which the challenges and opportunities have been defined. Secondly, to present the research questions, and finally, the objectives. These challenges and opportunities come from two different studies which were commissioned by two regions, Africa and Europe, and Asia and the Pacific. Those studies are available to you on the KIX website so that you get a better idea of the issues and the lack of knowledge in the various regions during the elaboration of your proposals. I would like to underline that beyond those studies, the issue of data systems and their use for management and government, the education systems have been a constant preoccupation, major preoccupation since we launched KIX in 2019. It was one of the 6 priority themes identified for research projects. Within the KIX regional hubs, the data systems and use, those issues have always been important and remain important for exchange and learning between the countries. Next slide. The general challenge in the context of this call is to generate and mobilize proofs for innovative approaches in order to reinforce the systems, the databases, and the use of data for communication. Other theme, they needs research and technical questions, multiple aspects of for an efficient governance and durability. It is about widening databases to better understand the objectives of teachers and learners. This theme comes from the following observations. First of all, we are still missing essential data in the information systems for education about gender, equity, and social inclusion of certain groups for quality education. And also those about measuring the learning, the situation of refugee children in the education systems. Secondly, relevant data is being lost in other databases or systems which are hosted in other systems like health, social issues, and youth and others. So it is important to integrate and harmonize those databases for better consistency and better use. So it would be interesting in our practices and approaches that we address this challenge in the project that you will be submitting. The two last themes about the use of platforms and the tools to better the use of data for the users of those data, and also to it comes from the fact that at the moment we have several types of platforms online on proofs, evidence, but some stakeholders cannot access them. And even if they do manage to access them, they don't manage the proper reading of that data to make good use of it in their decision making. As you know, for years, the data in the information systems were centralized in the ministries for education. And at the moment, we're moving towards decentralization of those systems on a provincial or a city or district level, or even school level. That's the case for parents and the organizing committees at school. So this mutation has implications on the infrastructure level, legal as well, reinforcing capacity with those new centers of decisions. So we will be welcoming the projects that are going to reveal innovations and promising practices on those subjects. And more interesting still, if those projects have the potential to generate knowledge on how this decentralization or devolution of the management of data can be done at those levels. Next slide. The last slide brings me to the issues of research. These research issues invite for proposals which have to do with the challenges answering the following questions. First, the general question, which is to know how the impact of promising innovation in terms of data systems and use of data can be put to scale to support the education systems in the GPE partner countries. And I'll pause here to bring your attention to two keywords: promising, and that's to say that a proposal that is based on innovations that haven't been tested on the field has very little chance of being selected. So it's important for you to make sure that your proposals bring proofs, the efficiency of innovations on which your research projects are based. Now, there's a question. The first question is, what are the efficient strategies or adapted strategies to put those innovations at scale in a durable way? What are the factors that favor the tool or make it difficult to put these innovations to scale? And the last one is how these innovations can promote gender equality, equity, and inclusion. I would like to bring your attention to the fact that these are central questions for KIX. And so your project should have a very clear methodological basis on those questions. Next slide, and this will be the last one. So based on the research questions, you have realized that the objectives are manifold, and it goes this way. First of all, it's about producing proofs on the way to improve the impact for the use of data systems in education systems. Second one, reinforce the capacities of the stakeholders. And finally, to have access to those evidence to strengthen those systems. And before I conclude, and before I hand the mic to Tricia and Shanghai, I would like you to make sure that your proposals answer the general issue and that the objectives of your research proposals reflect the objectives that we've mentioned. And now it's over to Sangay and Tricia, who are going to present the central questions about this call.
Okay. Greetings. Hello to everyone. My name is Sangay Jamso. I'm a senior program officer for KIX based in New Delhi at the IDRC Asia Regional Office. So moving on to what we are looking for in this call, we've received many questions already to do with eligibility. So I will address many of them here. And you will also find these in the call document in more detail. So let me start with the general eligibility criteria. There are three important points to remember here. First is proposals may be submitted by individual organizations or a consortia of up to 3 organizations. These may include research institutions, universities, think tanks, network secretariats, associations, civil society organizations, non-profits, or the private sector. So proposals from consortia must name one lead organization who can actually then subgrant to other members in the consortia. Proposals number 2, proposals must be submitted by nationally or internationally registered or incorporated organizations. So applicants must have independent legal status and be capable of contracting in their own right and name, receiving and administering funds, as well as have the authority to direct proposed project activities. And third one is that applicants must have a strong presence and track record of work in the education sector in the GP partner countries. Now, in terms of who is not eligible, individuals, government ministries and agencies, for-profit providers of core education services will not be eligible for this funding. Next slide. Let me now just get more detail on the different types of grants and their specific eligibility criteria. So proposals may be of any of the following 3 types. Each has a different location of intended impact, funding level, and duration, and may apply either as, and these may all be applied as an individual or as a consortium of organizations. Now, look at single country grant proposals. They must be submitted by national organizations based in countries of focus. They may apply as individual organizations or lead a consortium. That includes other organizations from within or outside the country. Multi-country grant proposals must be submitted by an organization based in a low or middle income country in Africa and Europe, Asia Pacific region. Other consortium members may include organizations from within or outside these regions. Regional or global grant proposals may be submitted by organizations that meet the general eligibility criteria, and they can be as individual organization or leading a consortium. Now, allow me to elaborate a little bit more on the distinction between multi-country and regional or global grant, as you may find this a little ambiguous. Now, multi-country grants are for those for proposals that focus on specific countries or specific priorities in countries involved, whereas regional or global grants are for projects that target impact at regional or global levels. And regional or global grants will be expected to generate education public goods such as guidelines or toolkits relevant at those levels. An example of such a global toolkit or a global public good would be from one of our ongoing projects would be the Early Childhood Education Accelerator Toolkit. Now, this toolkit is designed to help countries mainstream early childhood education in their education sector plans and can be customized as per national priorities and context. It may be that multi-country grants also generate such public goods, which would be great, but it is not necessarily a must-achieve expectation in their case. So their primary purpose and expectation for the multi-country grant would be to address the challenge or priorities identified for the countries in which it will be implemented. So overall, our preference is for multi-country and global grants. Single country grants will be considered where multi-country grant is difficult, multi-country work is difficult, or when the proposal provides a compelling and unique opportunity for learning from a single country case. And proposals must target, now the important point is that proposals must target and be grounded in GPE partner countries. You will find a list of these countries in the Annex A of the call document, or also find the information on GPE's website. Next slide, please. And then over to you, Tricia.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'm going to review our expectations of what these projects would look like. The first point is that it is extremely important to us that the research that we fund is relevant and important for education systems. So in proposals, we're looking for a demonstration about how they link to the education policy priorities of the countries in which they're working, and how they have clear plans on how the project would relate with key stakeholders that would include but are not limited to people in ministries of education. We're looking for evidence of this, and that could be through a letter, for instance, from relevant stakeholders indicating their approval or interest in the project. If that's not possible, it could also be demonstration of a clear alignment with official documents like the Education Sector Plan, the Partnership Compact, or other strategy documents. So we will be looking for evidence that applicants are working in those country or countries and have relationships with key actors that would ensure that this project could be useful and targeted positioned for use. The second expectation is that projects that we will fund are expected to undertake what we call research for development, which is designed to build knowledge, innovation, and evidence, to strengthen capacity and help mobilize that knowledge for policy and practice. They should be problem-focused, solution-oriented, and action. They will be expected to meet what IDRC expresses as its ideas of research quality plus. There's a link provided to our Research Quality Plus framework in the call document. RQ Plus style research is methodologically robust. It is relevant and important. It is ethical. It incorporates local knowledge. It promotes gender equality, equity, and inclusion, and it is positioned for use. A third expectation is that we expect proposals will focus, as Hamidou was explaining, on promising or proven innovative approaches that have the potential to be scaled and facilitate important change in GPE partner countries. So first, what do we mean by innovation? So innovation refers to a combination of tools or practices, programs, technologies, approaches, methodologies, toolkits, platforms, or other interventions. So what I mean here is that innovation does not just mean digital innovation. All manner of approaches could be innovative. Often it's a combination of different elements that can vary according to context and needs that produce new solutions to education problems. So we encourage applicants to work with culturally relevant and contextually appropriate interventions that are feasible, cost-effective, and scalable in the countries that the call targets. The innovations may have been developed within that national context or outside where your projects are taking place. The research should focus on questions about scaling, generating evidence about and to support scaling impact. This might include adapting or refining the innovation for the contextual needs of the selected countries, maybe developing or testing means and models of scaling, supporting capacity strengthening of stakeholders who will adapt, adopt, and scale the innovation, conducting cost analyses or cost effectiveness analysis, and assessing results. Proposals are really encouraged to take a critical approach to scaling. Bigger is not always better. Scaling is meant to be a process of improving the reach, breadth, quality, equity, and sustainability of changes and solutions that the innovations are bringing to education systems. In the call document, you will find a number of links to resources about scaling that elaborate on this. The fourth point is that we expect proposals will be oriented to promote gender equality, equity, and inclusion. We expect to see this because that is a core of the issues in the challenge that Hamidou already presented. It's in our research questions and the objectives for this call. So your proposal should convey how that would be incorporated into your project. We encourage you to think about gender equality, equity, and inclusion in terms of, for instance, who is in the proposed research team and the organizations involved? Who are those people and what expertise do they bring? Look for it in the design and implementation of the proposed research, how you are building gender equality, equity, and inclusion into your theory of change and monitoring approach, how you are building it into your knowledge mobilization strategy. Gender-blind proposals will not be considered. If you're looking for any additional guidance on integrating gender equality, equity, and inclusion into your research proposals and the implementation of projects, look at the call document. There is an annex at the end, and there are other numerous resources online. Finally, projects funded out of this call are going to be invited to participate in joint learning and synthesis activities with other KIX-funded projects, into collaborative learning about scaling, for instance, and to extend their knowledge mobilization strategies with the regional hubs. They will be required to link their results to a KIX-wide results framework and track these through monitoring, evaluation, and learning strategies. We'd advise that you anticipate that you'd be part of the Knowledge and Innovation Exchange if you would be funded through this call. And think about who from your proposed team would be involved and that you budget time for it. Back over to Sanke.
Thank you. So what are we looking for in a proposal? So basically, how will your proposals be evaluated? There are four categories of criteria. You will see them, their rubrics detailed out in the call document. But if I were to summarize it here, so we will be looking for strong proposals that directly address the challenges outlined in the call, speaks to the priorities and context of chosen GP partner countries for your project, and presents a convincing strategy to address these, in other words, the relevance and likelihood of impact. Second is the design and methodology. So we will be looking for proposals that present a convincing design to achieve results, an appropriate methodology to address the research questions, clear strategies for adaptive management and mitigation of risk, knowledge mobilization, scaling impact, and stakeholder uptake. Third, we would be looking for proposals that also have a clear theory of change and outlines processes to monitor progress, adapt, and achieve results, and report them. And finally, applicant or project team should demonstrate a strong track record that is suitable to the task proposed, and have required capacity in education systems, gender equality and inclusion issues, knowledge mobilization, and applied research. And also, more importantly, have a clear strategy of team coordination as well as fair and equitable partnership, especially in case of consortiums. So these would be the four categories of criteria on which the evaluation of the proposals will be based. Next slide, please. So what happens after you have submitted the proposal? So here's some more details. And successful applicants will receive grant proposals from IDRC that will include a number of important terms and conditions. We have put links to, this is in the call document as well. The application form will ask you to confirm your agreement to abide by these policies if you are selected. We have also put online the standard grant agreement that IDRC will issue for projects funded through KIX. Please have the admin, finance, or legal people in your organization review the detailed call document and applicable policies. Now, once the proposals have been received, IDRC will review all submitted proposals to ensure they meet the eligibility requirements and include all necessary application materials. After that, IDRC will review them based on the evaluation criteria and send a short list of proposals to the KIX independent assessment panel, who in turn will review eligible proposals using the evaluation criteria. IDRC will identify the independent assessment panel recommended proposals up to the maximum budget for the funding envelope available for this call and notify applicants of the results. And upon signing of the grant agreement, grantees will be oriented to the KIX objectives and processes over a period of 3 months, which we call the inception phase. During this period, KIX program officers will work with grantees to align projects with the overall KIX theory of change and the results framework, and provide support and guidance on important requirements such as scaling research, gender equality and inclusion, knowledge mobilization, and monitoring, evaluation, and learning, including reporting. Next slide, and over to you, Trish.
Thank you. So with that, we have answered a number of the questions that we've received so far by reiterating what was already in the detailed call document. We're going to proceed with some more of the more specific questions that we've received by email. Just want to mention that sometimes the questions that we received were very specific to a particular organization or country context, and in answering them, in order to make answers available to all at the same time, we're going to make them more general, conveying the content of the question maybe without the specific details that we received by email. So if we go to the next slide, I'm on slide 15 for our webcast colleagues. We received questions particularly around consortia. What are we looking for in a consortia? What are requirements of the lead organization? What about having additional partners beyond the 3? So let me address some of these consortia questions now. What are we looking for in terms of the consortia? Well, basically, we are looking that across the organizations involved, whether that be 2 or 3 in a consortia, that you have the ability to implement the work that you are proposing in the context in which you're proposing it. We're looking for a breadth of experience that covers off the needs of the team. In terms of the lead organization, we're looking for, as Sange already referred to, there are specific eligibility criteria for the lead organizations for single and multi-country grants. For single country grants, of course, the lead organization needs to be based in the country of focus, and in multi-country grants, they need to be in lower middle income countries in the regions that we are targeting. The lead organization needs to have the capacity to manage a large-scale grant from a financial and operational point of view. We're looking for presence in the field. We're looking for thematic experience in the subject of the proposal. We'll be looking for the ability to coordinate multiple partners and members of the consortia, ability to participate in knowledge exchange with other KIX-funded projects and hubs, and that it is an independent, legal, incorporated entity capable of contracting in its own right and name. The lead organization would be the one that signs the legal agreement with IDRC for the grant, and it would subcontract or subgrant to others. Only in exceptional circumstances would IDRC consider separate grant agreements with a consortia partner beyond the lead. In terms of having additional partners, yes, you may want to include other partners in your plans and proposals. You might want to include other relevant people like teachers' organizations or a relevant NGO, people with specific research expertise. You should think about what the stakeholders are who are relevant to your project's objectives and how best to engage with them, and maybe draw them in as strategic partners in your proposal. Over to you, Sange.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we have quite a number of questions on eligibility, and we will address some of the specific ones here. So here we have 4 questions on eligibility. First is, can private sector organizations apply? The answer is yes, except for for-profit providers of core education services, such as chain private schools, for example. And proposals that include private sector actors should demonstrate how private sector resources, whether it be financial or technical know-how, will contribute to the project. So that's the important criteria. And the second question is, can you grant to UN agencies? And the answer to that is yes, IDRC can grant to UN agencies. Question number 3 is, can ministries of education be consortium partners? The answer is no. Majority of GPE funding actually goes to ministries of education through a separate funding mechanism. And KIX is a complementary mechanism which targets other actors. However, ministries of education could be involved as strategic partners, as Tricia mentioned earlier, but they may not receive funding through this call. And finally, can current KIX, GPE, or Education Out Loud grantees apply? And the answer is yes, they can.
Thank you.
Next, please.
We're continuing on with more eligibility questions. This question, can a lower middle income country based organizations who lead single or multi-country projects involve researchers who are based elsewhere? Yes. Are organizations based in a lower middle income country that is not a GPE partner country lead an application for a multi-country project? Yes. If that organization is based in one of the regions covered in this call, that is lower middle income countries in Africa, Europe, Asia, the Pacific, and the Middle East. Back to Sange.
Right, and our final question that we've received so far on eligibility is, can national offices of international organizations lead applications for single and multi-country grants? So single and multi-country grants are to be led by low and middle income country-based organizations because we are prioritizing funding to organizations in the global south in those two grant types. So the answer is no, because many interested international organizations have actually national or regional offices whose grant agreements are managed through a head office in Europe, North America, or elsewhere. Those national or regional offices are not eligible to apply for this single country or multi-country grants. Next slide.
Thanks. So then we had a question around the location of the research. So the question was, understanding that multi-country and regional or global projects must include grounded work in at least 3 countries, can those 3 include both GPE partner countries and non-GPE partner countries? And the answer is no, that we are solely focused on work in 4 GPE partner countries. Over to Sange.
So we have a question on type of research. And the question is there a preferred methodology for the projects to be funded through this call? And the answer is no, we have no preferred methodology, but the selected methodologies must be appropriate to answer the research questions and achieve project objectives in their context. Proposals must be explicit and elaborate on the justification for the methodology chosen. Next, please.
Thank you. So people wanted a clarification about how do they submit an application? Is it only online? And yes, it is only online. There's a landing page on IDRC's website about this call. And from there, at the bottom, there's a link to the detailed call document, to the FAQ page, and you'll find a button that says Apply Online. So if you click there, that will take you to the online application form. I'm going to continue with the next slide, which is about what can we finance when it comes to scaling type research. So the call mentions that it will not finance the implementation of the approaches. And the author of the question asks, what do you mean by this? Are the costs of scaling and replicating excluded? So to clarify, the research that we fund is intended to build on things that are already working and position research to build and mobilize knowledge about how to scale impact. So the financing that we're offering is not to implement the approaches, it's for the research. So if I can just give maybe an example that maybe helps ground this. So there is an approach that was, for instance, developed by an NGO, and there is already an intention to integrate it into the public school system through ministry-driven processes. Research could test how the approach needs to be contextualized to work in the public system as opposed to being an NGO-driven approach. Research can help test its efficacy in different delivery methods or at different scales. research can help understand what are the costs and cost drivers, how costs can change at different scales. Research can help understand how the scaling can best promote gender equality or take into account the needs of learners with disabilities. So these are all research questions that address scaling objectives, but they don't pay for the implementation of the model. Or for instance, maybe there's a system that was set up for the national level, but now the questions are how to scale it down, as it were. How could that system be used at a district or even school level? There would be a lot of research questions about how to build out a system for different contexts, different users, different purposes, different capacities. So those are the ways in which we're hoping these projects that we fund investigate and build evidence to support the scaling of innovative approaches. Back to Sanjay.
Thank you. So we have a question on areas of focus. And the question is, does the call cover all levels of education from pre-primary to tertiary? And the answer is no. The KIX grant projects focus only for early childhood to secondary education and not at tertiary level. Of course, the teacher training for early childhood to secondary education is also inclusive in the calls. Next, please.
Great. So then we received a question, can an organization submit more than one proposal? And the answer is yes. An organization can submit up to 2 proposals if they're applying as an individual organization or as the lead of a consortia. The same organization can be a consortium member on additional proposals beyond those 2. So from here, I'm on slide 25. We're open now for questions that we can receive live on air, and we will use as much time as we can during this hour to answer your questions. Again, if you're looking for the place through which to submit your questions, on your web browser, find the little chat bubble. If you click on that, you should be able to come to a screen that invites you to type in your email address and to type in your question. We have some colleagues in the background who are going to be sending us the questions as they come in. So if you can just give us a moment to get ourselves organized, we will see what are some of the questions that are coming in. Okay, so the first question, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger on my screen. The first question is that the call is about generating data and the status of data, bridging the gaps and establishing innovative approaches in using data, or piloting an education system to bridge the data gaps and generate data for the innovation of for innovative utilization. So the question is asking us to clarify, what are we talking about? The answer is that the focus that we have is on the first part. The call is about generating data and the status of data, bridging gaps, and establishing those innovative approaches in the data systems. So we are looking to focus on scaling proven or promising approaches to identify knowledge gaps. And the purpose of this call is the purpose of the call is to generate and mobilize evidence to scale that impact. We're not looking to pilot all kinds of new things in education systems. So please take a look for what is already working, whether that be in that country context or elsewhere, so that we can build and scale impact of things that are already working. Sanjay, the next question is directed to you. How about I read the question and then you can answer it, if that's all right?
Yep, sure.
Great.
Please
so
go ahead.
The question is actually, it was a specific one. In Uganda, most schools are run by government. How are we going to make them adopt these innovative approaches when they are not eligible for funding?
So the answer to this would be, projects are meant to generate the evidence and scaling strategies for adoption of innovations in public system, and not really to implement them at scale. So ministries of education are not eligible for funding or transfer of resources, but research can include research expenses required for the implementation of pilots, such as teacher training, materials, or others managed directly by the research institutions or the grantees. So let me read the next question. It says, objective talks about learning outcomes, learning experiences. Does this encompass both primary and secondary? What about ECD?
So yes, the call is seeking to strengthen data systems and data use at all levels of basic education, from pre-primary to secondary. So we are keen to understand how early childhood development and early childhood education can be integrated into national and subnational data systems and their use. So Sanjay, another question that came in is, does the call only focus on existing data and data systems and not new research?
So the answer would be the call focuses on scaling proven or promising innovations to strengthen data systems and data use through applied research. So emerging research that has proven effective in strengthening data systems and use is encouraged. The next question is, for a proposal on tracking and obtaining information on Ukrainian refugee students, education seekers, cooperation is needed with EU countries. Should a potential project be submitted under the category of regional or global grants?
Okay, well, so if the project is developed only in Ukraine, that the field work and stakeholders' involvement, for instance, would be focused just in Ukraine, you would apply to a single country grant. You could apply individually or leading a consortium that includes other organizations, for instance, from EU countries. So please keep in mind that we don't fund the implementation projects. We're funding applied research projects, the purpose of which is to generate evidence to support scaling of the impact of proven or promising innovation. Sanjay, another question is, do you accept proposals on teacher school-based learning and interventional study?
So as long as the proposal has education data systems and data use as its core, the research can address this issue from any angle and through the methodology of the research team's choice. The detailed call document outlines the evaluation criteria that will be used to assess each proposal. So the next question is this just a call for proposals, or was there a call for concept notes prior to this RFP? Can organizations apply directly for the proposal if they did not apply for concept notes before?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So IDRC does calls for proposals in different ways, and sometimes we do issue first a call for concept notes and then invite only some of the applicants to develop full proposals. This, however, is a call from the outset for full proposals. So there was no concept note stage. So please, even if you did not develop a concept note, you can develop a full proposal and just submit it by the July 17 deadline. Another question is, would you consider proposals that are action research oriented?
Yes, action research and applied research proposals will be considered. As far as beyond the piloting of innovations in the local space, there is a research effort oriented to generate and analyze evidence and reflect on scaling challenges and strategies. And the next question is, in the call for proposals, it is stipulated that organizations are required to have a strong presence and track record in each country. In the case of consortia aiming to apply for a regional or global grant, and that would like to target more than 3 countries, how would this work given that there is a limit of 3 organizations per consortia?
So applicants must understand that they must demonstrate that they understand gaps in the target countries, whether they're based in those countries or not. Applicants, sometimes organizations have footprints and people and parts of their organization that work in multiple countries. So that's how we would see that working. But applicants can also identify and partner with implementing countries based in those other countries if they don't have a physical presence. Another question, Sanjay, was that whether we could share details of all the organizations on the call to foster partnerships.
Well, no, IDRC will not share information about organizations that submit proposals to this call. It is up to the applicants to actually look for and find the right partners for this project.
Okay, so some more questions are coming in. The question is, do innovations need to come from the contexts in which the project will be implemented?
Well, the innovations may come from inside or outside of GPE partner countries. We are particularly interested in innovations that prove to be effective across different contexts in low or lower middle income countries, and those that originated in countries of focus, so homegrown innovations, and prove to be effective. So another question we have is, what scaling research may look like based on your experience?
So yes, in KIX, we do focus research for and about scaling. So research for scaling might focus on adapting or refining an innovation to the contextual needs of the selected countries. It might develop or test means and models of scaling, so different pathways to scale. It could support the capacity strengthening of stakeholders who would adapt, adopt, or scale those innovations. As I said before, conducting cost analysis, understanding cost drivers, understand cost effectiveness or value for money, understanding costing at different scales. All of those are research questions for scaling. And of course, assessing results for different delivery models, assessing results at different scales, assessing results for different categories of results. Research about scaling focuses on documenting experience of the scaling research and processes. So for instance, you might focus on how that adaptation process happened, what adaptations were needed for contextual realities. We would like to know not only how you adapted the innovation, but also what you learned about the adaptation process and what the world can learn about scaling impact, because scaling is a bit of a black box. So we want to unpack that through the research that we're funding. Sanjay, there's another question about what are the expected outputs from these projects?
So as Tricia mentioned, research for and about scaling is at the core of the applied research projects funded by KIX. So given this, we expect the funded projects to produce scaling-related outputs. These scaling outputs may look different across projects depending on the exact focus of research. The outputs may include, but are not limited to, scaling strategy, documentation of approaches to adapting and contextualizing an innovation in new contexts or under different conditions, costing analysis of an innovation, and proof of effectiveness of an adapted or contextualized innovation. So in addition to scaling outputs, the projects may produce outputs that capture new evidence in the thematic area in which the project is working. For instance, outputs may be situation analysis or assessment reports that projects usually conduct at the beginning to assess the situation. They may also come out with other outputs such as policy guidelines, research publications, even blog posts, and teaching learning resources or technical guidelines. So these are some examples of expected outputs from the projects. Our next question is, will you fund RCTs to determine the effectiveness of innovations under different conditions?
Sure, yes. The projects that we fund could assess the results of an innovation using an RCT or other appropriate methods. Sure.
So our next question is, are proposals expected to respond to all the subthemes?
No, projects are not expected to respond to all of them, but at least one. And in some cases, proposals are developed that address more than one, but you don't need to respond to all three. Another question, Sanjay, is under the multi-country category, can countries be selected across different regions of Africa? For example, if country A is from West Africa, country B is from East Africa, and country C is in Central Africa.
An answer to that is yes. Proposals from multi-country or global or regional grants may work in countries across different regions. And yet another question is, can you please explain how the expenditure is reported and evidenced on this project? Does it have to be based on payroll and invoices? Example, consultants, how would we include margin?
Sure. So project expenditures will be based on an agreed upon project budget, and it will be reported on based on the grant agreement's schedule of milestones. There's actually a whole guideline on acceptable budget expenditures on the website. So please have your finance people take a look at that so you understand how to prepare your budget and the reporting and documentation that you would need to be providing along the way. We have very few minutes left in this webinar and more questions coming in. So Sanjay, let's try to get through one more. Is a consent from government a mandatory requirement to an application? And do we need a letter of support for this?
Right, so this is outlined in section 5 of the detailed call document. Says that proposals must demonstrate clear links with education policy priorities and define plans for effective engagement of key stakeholders, such as Ministry of Education. This can be done in a variety of ways, either through letters or through evidence of clear alignment with current official documents, such as the Partnership Compact, the Education Sector Plan, or other similar strategic plan documents. So it doesn't require explicit consent from the government and doesn't necessarily have to be demonstrated through a letter.
I think that is as much as we can manage in this webinar. Really appreciate the questions that are coming in. We thank you very much for your interest, and we wish you all the best in developing your proposals. If we can go to the next slide, we'll see the key dates that are before us. The date for the submission of your proposals, the deadline is July 17, 2023. We would certainly advise that you get working on your proposals in a Word document and then you cut and paste them into the online proposal form. But please give yourself enough time to be able to upload it in time for the deadline. It is midnight of, or I think, sorry, 11:59 in Ottawa time on July 17. You can continue to submit questions for the next couple of weeks, and we will update the FAQ document if there are questions that are broadly relevant to everyone. So please do take a look at that FAQ document before you submit your proposal, in case there's any clarification that somebody else asked that could help you. So we are very happy for your interest. We look forward to reading your submissions. You will hear from us by the end of September about whether your proposal was selected or not for financing. So with that, we wish you a very good day and thank you for all of your interest and look forward to reading your proposals.